That's Justice AP Shah speaking exclusively to Supriya just a short while ago. His first interview after that report was made public. Let's bring on board Ashwin Mohan as well to try and analyze all that the report has said. Ashwin, a big breather for foreign investors, but the big question, has it already been priced in? Has it come in too late? What's the sense that you're getting speaking to top tax experts?
Well, Sandeep, for starters, this news will definitely perk up the markets because remember the BJP government had come to power promising a stable non-adversarial tax regime and the entire mad crisis was sticking out like a sore thumb. Now that today this has been put to rest, this will definitely perk up the market sentiment. And of course, what immaculate timing. It comes on a day when the markets have tanked by more than 650 points. Three other points I would like to make are as follows. Let's look at how this will impact the existing cases. There were many FIIs and FPIs who had in fact been slapped with MAT notices to the period prior to April 1st, 2015. Clearly, now that the government has made its stance clear over there, those cases will no longer be chased, so there will not be any adventurous tax practice, as one of the tax experts earlier put it on the show. So that's a clear-cut relief as far as those entities are concerned. Let's also look at the clear-cut roadmap that has been put forward by the FM today, leaving absolutely no scope for any difference of opinion or difference of interpretation on the ground. He has clearly said that they will go ahead and amend the Income Tax Act, and in the interim period, instructions will be sent to the Income Tax Department officials on the ground. So clearly their hands will be tied. So therefore, there's no need to worry on that front as well. Another important aspect is that in the past, we've seen several committees coming out with recommendations on tax policy, but those tax policies have not seen the light of the day when it comes to becoming the rule of law and being incorporated in the Act. Now that the FM has said that this will be amended to the Income Tax Act, that will definitely provide a great deal of certainty, not only to the tax fraternity, but also to the global investors. Finally, let's also look at how this stance of the government today will impact the all-important Castleton case, because let's not forget that it was on the basis of the Castleton case that the Income Tax Department was piggy banking and chasing these mad demands. And from what tax experts are telling me, the government could possibly have a non-combative stance when that all-important case is taken up at the Supreme Court.
Ashwin Mohan, appreciate you breaking it all down for us right here in Business Tonight. But I'm going to go across to two people who we at ET now believe are the last word as far as Indian taxation is concerned. Parikh, who's the chief mentor to BMR Associates, and of course, Ketan Dinal, senior tax partner at PwC India. Thanks very much, both of you gentlemen, for being with us right here on ET Now on Business Tonight. Mr. Parikh, I'm going to begin talking to you. You know, everybody's been celebrating how this is a huge relief as far as the FII community is concerned. And the question really is, should we step back and today analyze, does the government deserve kudos for what they have done? Or do you believe this was the most logical thing and the obvious decision for the government to have taken?
So I don't know whether it's fair to now look at that at this juncture. I think we should. I would just say that I think that we should look at the bright side of it, and the fact that you know, we had this report. The government has taken it on board. It has acted on it, or it has promised to act on it, and that in itself is, I think, a fairly big step for the government to take, and it's something that we've not necessarily experienced or seen in a while. So it's a good step. I think to now sort of sit and debate as to whether this should have happened at all or not. I mean, I do have my views on it, but I don't know whether that's really something that I would comment on. I'd look at what has happened as a very positive development and really focus on that rather than worry about what might have been otherwise.
Sure. Ketan, great to have you as well. I'm particularly delighted because you were with us on the 25th of July this year when the report was submitted. That evening, ET Now was the channel that broke the story on the report, on the entire contours of the report, and it's now official, and we are glad that our report, in a sense, has been vindicated. But my question is, why the fuss? Why did it take the government 1.5 months to make the report public, accept it? I remember that evening you said that they should immediately accept the report, issue a clarification, and move on.
Well, I can't comment, Sandeep, on why that has happened. I think my understanding is that the report has already been made public, and I think the report said that there were some clarifications needed by the government. Those clarifications had to be incorporated in the report, and that is why it took the time that it did. And I think the Revenue Secretary, who has of course now taken another position, he mentioned on television earlier this week, I think on your channel, that there were consultations that needed to be held, and that is the reason why it took time. So I think rather than going into that, of course, as Bobby mentioned, it's unfortunate that this happened at all. But anyway, it's at least some good that has come out of it, at least in the form of the report being positive on FIIs and FPIs. But I think I just wish that the scope and mandate of the report had been broad-based to all foreign companies and not just FIIs, because this is not just an FII issue. It's a private equity issue. It's also an issue relating to other foreign companies. And I hope that the government's guidelines or circular or instruction, as Ashwin put it, which are to come out, really deal with the broader dimension and not the narrower dimension.
I'll talk about the scope and mandate in just a bit, but Bobby, coming on the impact of this, do you think largely the market has priced this in? Did foreign investors expect the government to do this? How much of a breather is this going to be for FIIs? Is it going to be really a sentiment changer at a time when markets itself are volatile? I just want to understand how much of a positive impact is this going to have on sentiment of foreign investors?
So I don't know what impact it has on the market, but from a sentiment perspective, I think it's a good thing to have happened. I think the fact that we had this uncertainty for the period of time that we had it, and the fact that the issue came up in the manner in which it did was unhelpful from a sentiment perspective. I think it sort of shook the investors and it shook foreign investors generally. The fact that the government has now been able to restore or clarify the position, and it's been clarified to the satisfaction, I think, of the investor community. I think it can only be positive. And so while you might sort of cavil about the fact that this should never have happened and things like that, and I think that there is merit in that, but we are where we are, but we now at least have a resolution, and the resolution has been fairly speedy.
Fair point indeed. In fact, like one of the FIIs put it on our channel, that there's one less issue to be concerned about now with this MAT relief coming in. Mr. Dalal, if I may come to you, are you one of those people who believes the right thing to do is to amend the Income Tax Act and not go the circular route, or would you rather have the circular route, done away with it, and forget about the Income Tax Amendment, because that is again going to be a time-consuming process? In the meanwhile, of course, circular, a clarificatory note may indeed be issued.
I think, Supriya, the issue is that in the meantime, because the Act cannot be amended immediately, but if a clarification is issued, that itself should suffice. And of course, one has the Castleton ruling also coming up, so the government really needs to decide how it's going to deal with that situation. I suppose it could issue a circular and then tell the court that, look, we've issued a circular, we really don't want to agitate it. So that's one dimension. And I just want to point out that from April 1, 2015, the law is anyway applicable also to all foreign companies, and I think Justice Shah said on television today that there is no reason why it should not apply to the past, or some words to that effect. And I think there is also a reference to that effect in the report. Of course, that is broader than the question you asked, and I think on that point, a circular itself will suffice. But ultimately, if they clarify through an amendment act or in the next budget as a clarificatory amendment, that should be enough.
The Finance Minister, Mr. Parikh, says that the notices that have been issued will, of course, be put to rest. I'm just asking from a legal point of view and, of course, from a tax angle, is that going to be an easy thing to do? An automatic burial of the notices that have already been issued to about 68 odd FIIs amounting to over 600 crore rupees?
So, wherever assessments have been completed, there will have to be something which will have to be done to undo the assessments, in a sense, or rectify the assessment. So so there will have to be a procedure, and and there might be more than one way in which this could potentially be done. But I think what it does is it removes the issue out of people's minds, because regardless of whether there is a tax demand or not, you know what the law is now. And you know the fact that the revenue is not going to collect that tax, and you also know that whatever tax demands may have been raised are going to get reversed. So I think the relief is instant. Now whatever has to happen is a matter of process to be able to sort of get the paperwork right and go through whatever procedures the Income Tax Act prescribes. But I think fundamentally from a peace of mind perspective, I think that unless there is any ambiguities in the way in which the clarifications come out or the circulars come out or the way in which the government goes about trying to amend the Income Tax Act, I think that if the position is now taken away the concern of people's heads.
Bobby, comment on the point that Ketan was making on the scope of the report, the fact that the relief only applies to FIIs and not for foreign companies. Is that a bit of a downer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you were going to look at it, it was clear that this was an issue which was a sort of an attached issue. It was while there was a big concern about FIIs, even when the Income Tax Act itself, the provisions were amended with effect from the 1st of April 2015. They initially dealt only with FIIs. Then they amended it before the bill was made into an act to incorporate even foreign companies generally. So, clearly this is a matter of concern not only for FIIs but for a broader community. And so, if we were going to deal with the issue, it might have been good to sort of deal with it comprehensively rather than to take one segment of the market which has been affected by this development and leave another segment unaddressed in a manner of speaking. So I would have wished that the resolution was comprehensive rather than only addressing a segment.
But Ketan, what could be the rationale for this, for not making it comprehensive and not giving relief to all sections of the foreign investor community? What according to you explains this decision taken by the AP Shah committee, which has of course now been endorsed by the government?
So I think that's a really good question. I think what happened was, Sandeep, that the scope which was given to the committee was FIIs and related issues. And I think what really happened was that when the entire issue came up of MAT on foreign companies, it actually primarily came up, it started somewhere in the last quarter of 2014, and it primarily came up for FIIs. So I think the natural tendency of the government was to say, look, here is an issue which has come up for FIIs, so let us deal with FIIs, and perhaps it skipped their mind that it is a broader issue that is applicable to all foreign companies. In fact, many of us who appeared before the Shah panel mentioned that, and Justice AP Shah, I think, mentioned even today, earlier on television, that look, our scope was only related to FIIs and therefore we cannot really deal with the other thing. But I understand that the report has made statements which seem to indicate, I think it's there somewhere in para 6, which seem to indicate that it says something to the effect that FIIs and FPIs which do not have a place of business in India will not be liable to MAT, etc. And I think the language for foreign companies and FIIs, etc. would have to be similar. The intent was quite clear. So I think the government hopefully should issue a circular that will broad base it, because as Bobby said, when the finance bill became an act, they anyway broad-based it from FIIs and FPIs to foreign companies. And I don't see any reason why that should not happen in the past. Otherwise, it will be unaligned. And I think the Shah committee has also said that it is actually clarificatory. That, of course, they have said it more in the context of FIIs. But if it is clarificatory, and I think it is, it should apply across the board to all companies, even for the past. And I think that is what the government will do anyway.
Actually, a little bit of inside information that doesn't always hurt everybody. What we are picking up is that they had actually given a more encompassing report, and then of course this report was referred back to the AP Shah panel, and they were told that just stick to the FIIs, and that's what we've been asked you to do. So you've actually gone beyond your terms of reference and given it for the larger community. So that's some amount of inside information that we have on that report. But a quick last word from you, Mr. Parikh, and this is really about, the government has burnt its fingers as far as miscommunication on the whole MAT issue is concerned, the ambiguous circular that was issued. What are some of the safeguards that you would warn the government to have in mind? Because you will always have an overzealous field officer who can spook sentiment, if need not be.
So I think that I don't know what the general safeguards can be, but I think that this, as far as the FII MAT issue was concerned, it could have been potentially handled differently, because it was not something that the government was blindsided by, or it sort of hit the government unawares, and there was no time to think or to gather one's wits before deciding how to deal with it, because it's, as Ketan referred to it, it was a matter which sort of arose in the last quarter of 2014. And there were several months before the final actions were taken by the revenue, and there was enough time to be able to deal with this if one had to. And therefore I would say that certainly in situations where there is some pre-warning of things which are likely to have big impacts, I would expect that there needs to be greater sensitivity within the government and the revenue administration to sort of react to it and respond to it with perhaps more alacrity, to have better intelligence on an ongoing basis, so that if there are potentially sort of substantial issues that are going to emanate or arise out of actions which are taken in the field, that there is some way in which this filters up to the government sufficiently in advance of the action being taken, so that there is time for some reflection and review and consideration as to what the implications of that action might be, or whether that action is well founded or is not. So I think that we just need to be more alert, more responsive, and have the finger on the pulse, so that we are able to sort of take these calls proactively and preempt situations from getting out of control, rather than having to sort of douse the fire after one has been lit.
All right, miscommunication and intelligent communication with field officers is the word that's coming in from Bobby Parikh. Ketan Dalal and Bobby Parikh, we really appreciate you taking time out this evening and joining us on an issue that has been in public domain, but one we perhaps hope has now been put to a quiet burial. But let's get your perspective from top marketmen as well. Arvind Sanger of Geosphere Capital believes that the government's decision to not levy MAT on FIIs retrospectively would not be able to turn around the market sentiment, because this was an obvious thing for the government to do, and perhaps one that has been factored in.